Anyhow, this is Ed, and anyhow, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time listening to us, and we are going over the Ninth Amendment tonight. This is the one thing that, we have a gentleman that always brings up a lot of valuable points, and it's like, yeah, when are we going to have these public servants honoring their oath? Well, if you've been really realistically paying to the news media, they are. They are slowly doing this. But we have to hold their arms and hands and feet to the fire. Because right now they are so panicking because the Democratic Party is panicking right now. Because they're figuring if they lose the Democratic Party, that means the birth certificates and everybody's filings and everybody has to be certified. The Democrats cannot keep it in the back files like they've been doing. And as I personally know that in the state of Oregon Territory because of what I've done up here and what I've filed and what I've been through with these people for the last 20 years. And it's like, so when do I get my compensation? Well, it's like the thing is figuring out what court, how to put this stuff together, making sure that when you're putting this stuff together, you comprehend what you're putting together. So, and that comes on the power and the shoulders of we the people. That's each and every one of us, because we have to sit there and file to prove who we are, we're lawful or legal, what the circumstances are, and to force the trust to pay. And that's the one thing that is our responsibility, and we are getting this stuff really, really together. And a lot of us have been working on this. Now, we got a lot of competition out there with these other talk shows. A lot of them have been trying to incorporate or, some are starting to come back over Saturday and Sunday night. Yeah, and that is interesting because, like I said, we've had issues with that before, and so people are trying to go after numbers. And so it is interesting how the competition, as one would say, or the frustration of what's going on with us. Yeah, because we know we're being effective. We know people are paying attention. We know the stuff that we've been filing is getting listened to, getting read. And, it's like when I filed this stuff for each and every sheriff's department. I mean, and that went to the state reps and everybody. So, I mean, these people know what's going on, including what I filed on Kate Brown. And, there's a lot of us that have been filing on this and trying to get others out there to comprehend you got to file these criminal charges. You cannot sit there and expect somebody of some miracle to happen unless you sit there and start making it happen. And that's the one thing it comes down to. We the people, we have to start making these things happen. We have to talk about these things. We have to present these things. We have to get this information out. And the other point, if we know somebody who's going to court, we need to pack that courtroom in, and we need to have people in there filing on the judge and the jury, and so that way people get to know what they are. I've been having some thoughts about putting a ballot title together. And I'm not into that structure, and I did do research, and if I do that, so long as I do it so long as I do it as a lawful bloodline American and not file directly in their system, but they have to represent it. And I've got some more research I'm doing on that, and once I get the rest of these pieces of the puzzle together, I'm definitely looking at doing that. Because then that way, putting a ballot title together locally, I'm looking at, that way if our public employees violate their oath of office, you put a ballot measure together, you put it so that way this democracy of the stupidity speaks up, and you put it in such a fashion that if they violate their oath, they are mandatory to go to jail for violation of their oath. Then that way it's working. They can't sit there and say, well, we didn't know this and we didn't know that. When you go into public office, you get to know what you have to do. And that is the one thing that, when we start doing this stuff and putting this stuff together and standing up on these things, and that's what another group is doing. They are putting it together. I'm involved in numerous groups. And so I'm reading what some of these people have been paying attention to, what the information we've been passing back and forth, and they're speaking out. And some of these people are still trying to keep people in the structure of having an attorney or lawyer. And it's like, if you actually read the Constitution, there's no such thing as a lawyer. It's called counsel of your choice. Okay, and that doesn't mean that, that the state or the county or a jury, not a jury, but a state representative called a district attorney gets to be any part of a jury process. So if they're going to bring charges in the research that we have proven and brought out, and it's proven as fact, if they're going to bring charges, they cannot have their self involved in the structure once at all. And if they have their employees and anything like that in their structure, or, their government employees that are hired on the contracts, this is where this whole thing gets screwy. This is like when you listen to these other YouTube videos, and I watch a lot of these videos all the time. I'm plugged in very, very heavily, and I get people send me stuff all the time on this stuff. So I do read, I do research, I do look things up, I do double check. And, we got to make sure on what we're saying, what we're doing, and to make sure that people comprehend. And like I said, on New Oregon Trackers, Facebook, United States for America, Republic, Elected and Public Employees Oversights. And then we have the Recall Cape Brown. And then we have Civil War 1866 on Lawful Bloodline Americans on YouTube. And I do suggest that, recommend that you go look at some of the filings we've done over time. That's the one thing, is that once you start reading what the filings are and you see what's been going on in the news, and just to let you know, I do file this stuff like everybody else does with the and all that stuff. And just I got a call coming in, and it's like they know I'm online. I'm not dealing with it. So, but anyhow, it is like when this stuff comes out, and we're protecting all this structure. And the structure, when it comes down to, is personally your home, your bloodline, your structure. And without you protecting your structure and we working together to protect our structure, none of us have structure. None of us have freedom. And that is the most important thing that people need to realize, that if we're not protecting each other, we have no freedom. And that is our constitutional rights. So anyhow, I got a couple of videos I wanted to get into tonight on what we're going to be discussing. And this is, like I said, there's a lot of research putting this stuff together. Excuse me. And bringing this stuff together, the amendments, and putting the court structures together on these amendments, and putting the court cases together on these things, and getting them so that way when you go on the Facebook sites or the websites, you can see what they're actually doing compared to what, there's a lot of people got a lot of information out, and it is confusing. And I've had a lot of people tell me how confusing some of the stuff is out there. And it's like, just read the law. Read the statute code and administrative rules. So that is the one thing, that once you start realizing that, once you start participating as a lawful bloodline native or a legal citizen and protecting, so that way you have bloodline rights on this soil. Now, I'm very impressed that Donald Trump is calling the Marines to the borders, the Army. There's a lot of things that people are yelling and screaming about, because we're supposed to be this so-called open country of religion. We are not an open country for your religion. We are an open country that gives you the right to practice your religion in your home. It's not that you could bring your religion and influence our courts, our country, telling us how to live in our structure. You came to our country. We didn't ask you. And that's one of our native tapes that we have on New Oregon Trackers website. that we are not a country of immigrants. We are a country of invaders, terrorists, rapists, robbers, criminals of all types. And you got to remember, most of all this stuff came from foreign countries. I mean, we got the border trying to be influenced by 4 to 40,000 new immigrants. I mean, that's why 200,000 Native Americans went down to the borders to protect your family, our families, our structure. Remember, these men and women that are down there protecting not only for themselves, they're protecting your home because you don't have the disposition right now to participate. So nobody can argue. I mean, but that's the whole point. We're supposed to work together, so you keep the economy going and let the others sit there and get what they need to get done. So it is interesting when you step out of this movie and you watch the production with how this mind control has really taken effect, computers plugging in like, I am and everybody else. And you start realizing that without this communication and without teaching people and the children how to read a book first before they get to this point, because I don't believe kids should be on a computer or allowed on a computer until they're, at least 12, 13, 14 years old. Prior to that, they need to be reading books. They need to be, studying, factual videos that are on our real histories and stuff. They don't need to be on computers and get plugged in at this point because, look what it's done to our society today. Or look what it's done to our country today, especially with these foreign domestic terrorism coming in and invading our families. So it is one of those points of how do we solve these problems? We have them solved. We already have it written in your Constitution if you're a lawful bloodline native or if you are a legal citizen. And so walking through these steps and measures and figuring out how these amendments and these codes and these statutes, city and state codes and administrative codes work and who they're supposed to work for and how they're supposed to work and how they're supposed to protect you. And that is the point, is that you need to comprehend that, we do have a country that's going nuts by the police department and everybody else because of the craziness that has gone on. That's a fact. Nobody can deny that. But we have another fact, too. We have solutions that we can save our country from the inside out. And people go after Trump and, classifying what he's doing on a lot of stuff I question. But the other point is, I can't question it because he is closing the borders down. He is securing the country. He's making it stronger. The facts are more coming out with Japan and Taiwan and all these other countries, more than what we've ever knew before. So, we can't argue these points of what we're learning, what we're educating, what we're able to educate our kids on the true facts, like, how they're when they're tearing down those statutes and all this stuff in the South. Well, the South, we know what they fought for. They didn't comprehend it, some of them. So that is the point. But I don't believe that those monuments should be torn down and taken down. I believe those should be taught. And then you look at Arkansas putting up devil symbols in the Capitol and around the Capitol building and around the city. So it is interesting when these people believe in a book or some type of history instead of living in reality. Because that reality has been mind controlled, created, and all that stuff. We should be out hunting and fishing and taking care of our families and not playing these psychological games. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and let the producer go with the videos and shut up for a bit. Did I lose them? You got everybody muted. What's up? Hello? Come on. Hello? Hello? I gotta call back in. I don't know what's up. What's going on?
We need to defend the entire Bill of Rights. What does the Ninth Amendment say? Most people forget about the Ninth Amendment, but the Ninth Amendment was one of the most important parts of the Bill of Rights. In fact, the Bill of Rights would have never passed without the Ninth Amendment, because many of the critics said, well, if you list certain rights, the people will think that's all of the rights, and they'll think that that's a complete listing. So the people who put the Bill of Rights on the Constitution said, we need to make sure they know this is just the beginning. It's an impartial or incomplete list of your Bill of Rights. So the Ninth Amendment says those rights not listed are not to be disparaged because your rights come from your Creator and they are unlimited.
Yeah, they're here, Ed. They're just muted.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I was asking you to do the recording.
Yeah, and so I stopped what I was doing, which we talked about before the show.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had your hands full. I didn't hear you say anything, so sorry about that.
Let's get the next one going. I just finished the Rand Paul one, so let's do
Okay.
Why is the Constitution so hard? Peter Pacone, I believe it is. It's all right.
So anyhow, we're not.
When it was ratified in 1789, the U.S. Constitution didn't just institute a government by the people. It provided a way for the people to alter the Constitution itself. And yet, of the nearly 11,000 amendments proposed in the centuries since, only 27 have succeeded as of 2016. So what is it that makes the Constitution so hard to change? In short, its creators. The founders of the United States were trying to create a unified country from 13 different colonies, which needed assurance that their agreements couldn't be easily undone. So here's what they decided. For an amendment to even be proposed, it must receive a 2/3 vote of approval in both houses of Congress, or a request from 2/3 of state legislatures to call a national convention. And that's just the first step. To actually change the Constitution, the amendment must be ratified by 3/4 of all states. To do this, each state can either have its legislature vote on the amendment, or it can hold a separate ratification convention with delegates elected by voters. The result of such high thresholds is that today, the American Constitution is quite static. Most other democracies pass amendments every couple of years. The US, on the other hand, hasn't passed one since 1992. At this point, you may wonder how any amendments manage to pass at all. The first 10, known as the Bill of Rights, include some of America's most well-known freedoms, such as the freedom of speech and the right to a fair trial. These were passed all at once to resolve some conflicts from the original Constitutional Convention. Years later, the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, as well as the 14th and 15th Amendments, only passed after a bloody civil war. Ratifying amendments has also become harder as the country has grown larger and more diverse. The first ever proposed amendment, a formula to assign congressional representatives, was on the verge of ratification in the 1790s. However, as more and more states joined the Union, the number needed to reach the three-quarter mark increased as well, leaving it unratified to this day. Today, there are many suggested amendments, including outlawing the burning of the flag, limiting congressional terms, or even repealing the Second Amendment. While many enjoy strong support, their likelihood of passing is slim. Americans today are the most politically polarized since the Civil War, making it nearly impossible to reach a broad consensus. In fact, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia once calculated that due to America's representative system of government, it could take as little as 2% of the total population to block an amendment. Of course, the simplest solution would be to make the Constitution easier to amend by lowering the thresholds required for proposal and ratification. That, however, would require its own amendment. Instead, historical progress has mainly come from the U.S. Supreme Court, which has expanded its interpretation of existing constitutional laws to keep up with the times. Considering that Supreme Court justices are unelected and serve for life once appointed, this is far from the most democratic option. Interestingly, the founders themselves may have foreseen this problem early on. In a letter to James Madison, Thomas Jefferson wrote that laws should expire every 19 years, rather than having to be changed or repealed, since every political process is full of obstacles that distort the will of the people. Although he believed that the basic principles of the Constitution would endure, he stressed that the earth belongs to the living and not to the dead.
Alright, Ed, it's all you know.
Can we redo the one for Rand Paul, because we only got part of it. It was only because it's 59 seconds.
54 seconds, but yeah, I can redo it. I can just...
yeah, because we didn't get the whole thing, what he said at the end.
Oh, okay.
We need to defend the entire Bill of Rights. What does the Ninth Amendment say? Most people forget about the Ninth Amendment, but the Ninth Amendment was one of the most important parts of the Bill of Rights. In fact, the Bill of Rights would have never passed without the Ninth Amendment, because many of the critics said, well, if you list certain rights, the people will think that's all of the rights, and they'll think that that's a complete listing. So the people who put the Bill of Rights on the Constitution said, we need to make sure they know this is just the beginning. It's an impartial or incomplete list of your Bill of Rights. So the Ninth Amendment says those rights not listed are not to be disparaged because your rights come from your Creator and they are unlimited.
So anyhow, now that goes to your right to travel, your right to fish, to hunt. That is a right that the Constitution gives Americans, lawful bloodline. It doesn't give immigrants coming in this country that, like the state of Oregon has been doing in his democracy stuff, going against the Constitution. You know, and as you heard, dealing with the straw man, the basic corporation, your birth certificate is on, versus a living man. And it's not supposed to be the dead. It's supposed to be the living. But you got to realize in religion, you don't live unless you let the dead live through what your religion belief is. And this is the frustration that we live in going through today. I mean, it is a major, major frustration that people are not comprehending what's really going on in our court system, what's really not going on in our country. And so when people are going against these men and women and are standing up, and you've got all these congressmen, and I know some of these congressmen, you know, I worked with them, been down the road with them, and it's frustrating because they believe that they have given rights over you. And they forget that they're supposed to be working for you, the people, we, the people, not for themselves. And we know a lot of congressmen that actually do work for themselves. And like everybody keeps going, well, how do they keep getting voted in? Well, they get voted in because you're not standing against the corporation. See, it is our responsibility to stand against the corporation. That's why when they try to get this, I mean, they try to pass, you know, stopping abortion, a woman's right. Okay, in other words, you're saying the woman has no right and man owns her. She's the slave to the man. And that's what you're saying when you go through religious beliefs instead of going through common sense. The Constitution lays out your rights, not privileges. The Constitution also, too, states that we have the right on our right to feed ourselves, hunt and fish, how we need to take care of our family to the best of our ability and knowledge. And a lot of us are doing that, but we keep getting attacked on these things. And that's because of people's religious beliefs, what they think that they have a right to. So when it comes to the forefathers writing this document, and you get like Robert Rich out there that's telling you, oh, these people are stupid, you don't know what it's about. And it's like, it disturbs the heck out of me because people don't sit there and comprehend reality. Because the Constitution was written to protect you, the lawful bloodline native living man and woman on the 48th soil. That's why we didn't want religion. That's why people had the religious beliefs they have. Not religion in our courtrooms, not religion in our structures. You know, so I will, you know, that's why I write this stuff together. I put it together. I get it out there. And it is frustrating, you know, because people are not sitting there backing up a lot of the stuff that's going out there. Not only I'm doing, but others. But we do have some new surprises coming up and some filings that are going to be happening and what's coming out in this information. And that's the one thing that I'm looking forward to, a lot of this stuff. Because I'm looking forward to how this country is waking up for all the work that a lot of us are doing. You know, and that's the frustration. Everybody's out there trying to be, you know, possibly the king of his own crown, and that's what this country is not based on. This country is based on your merits, not your popularity, on what you're doing for the people of the country. And so that is the whole point, that when all this stuff gets out there and people are doing this and we're bringing this information forward to all of you folks, that's the blessing. Because this is the blessing that people need to learn how to protect their family. Not to sit there and continue arguing stuff. And so when all these other men and women out there are, you know, fighting for what they say the Constitution, and are not taking time to read the administrative rules, they're not taking time to put these instruments together or read how these court decisions have bounced back and forth, and read how these judges and read the history of these judges. You know, it just takes a couple minutes to look them up. So you read the history of these judges, and all of a sudden you start finding out a whole bunch of stuff. And so it doesn't take a whole lot of people's time to do a lot of this research. You get it done really quick, and I think, YouTube and Facebook and some of these other social medias, because even though that we are fighting and some people have disagreements on their contracts, because remember, when you sign into these groups, you sign a contract. And if you didn't put your administrative rules in or put your structure into these contracts, and then they say, well, you can't amend it and you can't have a slot to amend it, then when you go on them, then you send them the information to file your rights. You know, I mean, we've been blessed. We haven't been, we still get a lot of the work done. We get a lot of information out, and we do thank everybody that's involved that is doing the same. And so without the social medias or the internet, or, cell phones or landlines, we wouldn't have the communications we have today. So we have to think about what's going on, but we have to think about how do we define these things? How do we stand up to these things? You know, I fought the phone company when they were going through what they call rate changes and all this. And, you know, I've been through all this stuff where they, now we're going to give you a $59.99 lifetime membership on this for your internet. Well, I fought them to get back mine of the old original, what they did, 15 years ago. And it's like they were trying to tell me how to change the stuff, and it's like, no, we had a contract. And here's my filing and what I filed on that contract. So, I mean, it's paying attention, electronically and the way we were doing it paper-wise, or what are public employees and elected officials that are of the corporation. They're not officials over you and I, the lawful bloodline natives. They are our employees, and we have to treat them with respect too. So once you start, they're turning around. I mean, you folks have been seeing some changes going around in administrative and courts. I'm waiting for information because I got word possibly another court was literally shut down by what they call IRS fraud. So, because remember, these courts and attorneys, they have to report their income to the IRS. That's the law. Doesn't matter that they might be lawful bloodline natives or stuff. When it comes to that, and they're in the system and making living off the system instead of barter trade or, outside of the system, they have the administrative rules they have to follow. And so long as we keep them educated on that and, keeping the education going and watching the kids learning this stuff and growing. And it is great when you start listening to kids when they're starting to put this stuff together. That's why we have questions for them. Because we want to see if they're watching the videos or if they're reading or if they're comprehending what the Constitution means. And if they're comprehending what the Ninth Amendment means. And why they put the structure in to protect them and their bloodline. And that's what they're learning the education from their elders right now. So it is a blessing that is going on. And without the Great Spirit and Mother, because without that we don't have life, and without the Creator that gave us the foundation of, realistic thinking and looking at the grass, the water, the food, I get amazed when you sit there and talk to these people, that's fighting on these water rights. And it's like, excuse me, what? How come you're not filing the criminal charges when they pollute the rivers, going after the board members, the watershed councils, the colleges and universities? Because remember, they're all involved. That's how they created the jobs. And that's how they created the conflict that you're living right now, because they're sitting there going, oh, we need more money. We need you to sell your assets. We need you to give your birth certificate bond over to us. We need your homes. And so you follow our administrative rules, and if you don't, we're going to shoot you off your land if you don't pay these corporation taxes that basically, when it comes down to, that the courts are liable to pay those taxes. The attorneys are liable to pay those taxes. Administration are liable to pay those taxes. House and Senate and elected and public servants are liable for those taxes, not we the people. So it is when you step out and you really put all this stuff together and you see how it comes together, and you see when you read the laws and administrative rules and who's responsible and who's liable, and when these public servants says, you can't sue me, I'm above the law. Well, yeah, right now apparently some of them are above the law because we don't have elected and public employees enforcing the law. And that's why it's so important this election, that with Cape Brown, you know, people need to file and go after Cape Brown. I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on in Oregon. You know, they got a couple of administrative bills they're trying to put in, you know, to, put a food tax on us like California does, and Washington and other states that have a food tax. And it's like, excuse me, you know, you can't do that to us because our Constitution says in the foundation of this country states, of this country, Oregon, with the contract with the Queen of England and the Vatican, states we're not to be taxed. And so that is on new.org trackers with the website with the contract with Queen of England. And I had a certified copy of that at one point, but that actually got taken out of my house. And that was robbed because we got that back in 2005. But we were doing a lot of this stuff. But like I said, we got a very wise man out there that he tells everybody, get a certified copy. Prove it. That way you get the judge's signature or autograph on what he's stating, what he's confirming. From the Secretary of State, you get a certified copy from Dennis Richardson on this stuff. And, I mean, when I was up there, when Cape Brown got put on the Secretary of State, prior to that, I was getting things through and done. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't get nothing done, and then I just had to go file everything in the Secretary of State because they wouldn't certify it, but they will take the filing. So, but apparently, as the law states, when I filed it with the Secretary of State, the same thing as certified because they have to register it by their own administrative rules as filed. And, you know, I know I've put that in a lot of the letters here recently that states that they have to certify it when it's filed. So when it's filed, it's certified. That's by their own administrative rules and federal law. So we do have a lot of stuff out there putting this stuff together, figuring it out, coming together on these issues. And as we can see, once you start putting these, opening up the whole can of worms on this stuff, basically, and you step out of the movie and watch the production, that's why I keep recommending people watch that movie called Interstate 60, because it does explain your court systems, the fraud of your court systems. You know, your administrators, everybody knows it's a fraud when you walk into that court system on a traffic ticket. Everybody knows it's a fraud when you walk in, you know, basically an argument, what they call, domestic violence. That's supposed to go into a court that if a jury decides that man or woman, if that was that violent, would have to make amends. That means jail time, whatever the circumstances are. And that's supposed to be done by a jury, not a judge. But see, these legislative administrative one courts have basically took under national law called Interstate Universal Commercial Code. And we already have laws that are on the books protecting us, and that's what Donald Trump says we're pulling out of the United Nations, because the United Nations is founded, run by the British government and Nazi Germany. And you think Nazi Germany ain't still the way some of it is and run and controlled? I mean, we're in this country living no different than they were living when it comes back, all the way back in World War II, because our men and women are being shot on the street by public servants because they broke a code or administrative rule or they didn't pay some tax. So, this de facto corporation decides that we have a right to assassinate you for personal financial gain of your birth certificate bond. And that's the other point when you go on that, too. You can always read what me and Dave Lee Buse wrote. We both wrote a structure to the coroners to ask them if we were dead or alive. What was the insurance number when they redid it and how they did all this stuff. And we quoted their own administrative rules in that, too. I just don't understand. I don't comprehend why they panicked when they got it and why the House and Senate panicked when they got it, because we quoted their own administrative rules in it that these men and women, they go by, they live by, and we just quoted what they live by, and then we quoted the laws next to them that they're violating their oath of servitude and how they're, basically rape, robbing, and pillaging for this the corporation. And so it's all in the instrument. And so they can't conflict their own words, their own statements, what they filed, their own administrations. So, and that's the whole thing, is putting these administrations together. And this is like the one thing that dealing with 9, when they're trying to take your water rights away and all this. You have to file on these people, folks. We in the news media, we know it's sitting there not doing its job technically, but make them do their job. File it with the media as well. Just file it. You know that most of them are going to ignore it, but when it's in the record, and if you read the media structure of their oath, that the founding oath for media, if they don't, they see a crime and they don't bring it out, they are liable as well. They're a guilty party. So, and that's the one thing that we're watching what's going on with the Democrats panicking across the country. Pelosi and Waters and Feinstein and, King and all these people. If you watch them, they're all blowing off and making basically, in some regards, spectacles of themselves, in the media right now, fighting on this immigration and all this stuff. And it's like, if you go back to Dianne Feinstein back in one of her interviews in 1981 on immigration, and she was like, we need to put a border up, we need to put a wall up. That was Dianne Feinstein's campaign slogan in 1981. So, when she was running for, her same position she's been in, and if you ever read the Constitution, the founding structures, that the Senate is only supposed to be allowed to do 4 years, and the House is allowed to do 6. 1 terms only, period, end of story. They cannot do what they're doing right now under the democracy of the phony contracts they've been signing. But remember, those contracts, they are liable and they can't go to prison for. So, and that's the one thing, like, with the Vatican and all these people that you're seeing is panicking around the country, Facebook, media. So you see this going on in some of the mainstream media. I always get, Turk TV always brings out interesting things. I've challenged a few of their hosts, in a debate on some of the issues like immigration and stuff. And I get these people that will put on Facebook, well, this guy is the native to this country, and it's like, so how many family generations he goes back? And I get this response, well, he was born here. I don't give a darn. That doesn't matter. Read the Constitution. It doesn't matter what the so-called terrorist Obama said. Just because Obama says that we're a country of immigrants, we are not. We are a country that has been invaded and terrorized by other foreign countries and nations. And so when, it goes all the way back when England started putting out their pirates and everybody on the ocean and sent them out to Australia, and so that way they got rid of their problems. And so that's what the other countries are doing to our country right now, is getting rid of their problems to us. So we don't want their problems. And so we ought to be grateful and thankful for those men and women who went to the border and protecting your 9th Amendment rights. And Trump calling the troops down there to protect their borders so that way we're not going to be invaded. And yes, if there has to be bloodshed, hey, we have to go and start the, whatever he goes, well, we're going to start a World War III on it. World War III, you're living, folks. You think that those other countries, if that happens, you think that the people are not going to turn on those administrations of their own countries, their kings and queens and all that? Do you think all those servants to them are going to stand up and defend their lives for what they have been through? But their family and bloodline for generations have stand through? So, we are being blessed. So, and we got to look at it in a positive manner. We're watching things change, and that's the point. Because if we don't change, we're all going to just be cannibals and on the street. So it's going to be interesting to see the turn of events. And I'm very impressed with Trump shutting off China. And we got China that has 3 million acres that they own in the United States of America's soil. And they got it through corporation structure, and Trump wants to send all that back to China. And people go, well, then we have to pay for it and stuff. No, we don't have to pay for it. Those men and women, those senators who voted to allow that to happen, those senators and administrations and those servants, their employees, and those men and women that they call aides are liable. And aides go, I just did what I told. No. You either knew what you were doing or you didn't know what you were doing. And you knew what you were doing because you saw it. And some of those instruments of your administration, you actually adulterated and changed those documents yourself, probably. So we are looking at what has developed in our country, and we are seeing how these things are coming forth. We are watching other stations, too, that, like, the Patriot radio station, Constitutional Patriot radio station. They're getting information out. They're getting stuff out that once you start putting the pieces together and you start seeing it, that's a very, very good group of men and women. And they have a unique history in this country, too, themselves. In several major industries too themselves. And so it is interesting when you watch some of these movie and rock and roll stars and country singers and wrestlers and all these people starting to get it, and they're standing up and they're passing on the information. But remember, some of them can't be, vocal, because then they lose the sponsorships. But if they do it through their own family, and they do it to the people they know that they trust and give them the knowledge, it'll slowly start changing. Because you know how it is. You can't abrupt. It's like when you get kidnapped and held for ransom. Everything's changed right then, man. Next thing you know, you're captured a wild animal in a cage. And you're just supposed to sit there and stew because they're supposed to actually take that piece of paper of your birth certificate and walk it over and put it in the file cabinet so your body is not going through psychological trauma, and that's how they guarantee jobs with psychiatrists and, divorcees and family breakups and all this crazy stuff that's going on with the LGBT, whatever other symbol community. That's the one thing that's amazing. Growing up in this country, we never had that shoved in our face. I grew up in Haight-Ashbury area in San Francisco, and you knew who was gay, you knew who wasn't. You didn't need it on TV, and you sure didn't need it in our schools and our libraries. And these people dressed up as Satan images, come on, people. And they think that's comedy, they think that's entertainment. And we got a lot of comedians out there who do a lot of stuff like that, and people think that's comedy. It's not comedy. Look at the music industry today. You got a lot of musicians. You let Roseanne Barr, what she's been through. And everybody's saying, well, she needs to have her TV show back. And in a sense, that's between them. But when it comes down to it, she brought out a lot of good stuff over the last 40 years. So you got to look at these people and what they've done and how they're doing these things, and how people take what they call comedy instead of stepping out of the movie and analyzing it and putting it together and see what the script was really about for that movie or that production. So anyhow, I'm gonna zip up my mouth. I'm gonna why don't we open up the floor, see if anybody's got some comments. And if I forgot something that I was supposed to mention, somebody speak up, bring it up. And that is one thing that putting this together is about teamwork, working together. So let me zip up my lip and open up the floor.
All participants are unmuted.
Anybody would like to have a joust?
Ed, about
yes.
what Rand Paul said earlier about it being our none of the rights being specific. It just said it's God-given rights that we have, that is not so it's not limiting us to that.
No. You misgot that part, because what he's saying to you is you have the right to hunt and fish and live off the land. The Ninth Amendment protects us for those rights. He's not saying that we don't have rights. He's saying I'll have to get that sent to you so you can re-listen to it. Or I don't know if the producers got it so we could just listen to it real quick again, see if that's plausible. Because, no, I mean, he's saying a valid point there, that it was set up so that way they couldn't change against your hunting and fishing right. It was presented so they couldn't go against your rights. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also, like, I don't know, I guess like your property and stuff like that, too.
Right, that's your property, not the state corporations.
Okay, but I mean, is that what it's also covering too?
Yes.
Okay. Because,
absolutely.
Because as you know, the state turn around and decide, well, which person the child lives with and all this stuff, and that's taking their property away from one parent and giving more of it to the other parent. So. Right,
no, but that's where the Supreme Court came out and finally stated that they have to have a warrant to take a child into custody. That's why when you're watching these YouTube videos, excuse me. That's like when you're watching these YouTube videos where people are at the door going, "Where's your warrant?" Well, we're CPS. We don't need a warrant. We need to talk to your child. And they got a cop at the door. You've seen these videos, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
All right, but you see, people are getting it. They're standing up. That's part of what the Ninth Amendment is, because if they couldn't alter it, they couldn't take away your rights, including if you lived in an apartment structure. And you watch a lot of these people in apartment structures, and they say, well, you're under a contract in an apartment. Doesn't matter. You're in that domain. You still have rights. That a landlord allowed you into his establishment on his property to protect your rights, not to give them away. In exchange for that, you give him a federal debt note.
Now, what if, but in that federal debt note, only supposed to be for the federal employees, right? Not us.
Well, yeah, but see, that's the point. Remember, that landlord is getting a tax write-off structured by the federal government, so he has to protect your rights under those contracts.
Okay.
And see, that's where, I mean, I've been watching a lot of this stuff going on for the last several years, people posting stuff, bringing stuff to light. And that's what we need to do, is bring this stuff forward. So when you're watching, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, okay, you're answering my question, so I was going to say I yield then.
So, but that's what I'm saying is that, he's not saying that you don't have rights and you're not taking away your rights. I mean, that's like when Trump is ordering the border. It's like, it's been frustrating with his father, Ron Paul, fighting the banks for years and trying to get information, and then he was attacked for years, and people don't realize how severely, that they were attacked. And if you go back to the structure of, what the hell was his name that ran for president? Oh God, hang on a minute. I'm thinking of it. It keeps bouncing around my head. But Bush family, he was threatened by Bush. Perot. I mean, when he ran. Remember, he ran the same position as Donald Trump did. You know about? You remember Perot, don't you?
Yeah, Ross Perot.
Yes. He did the same thing as Donald Trump. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let's say that's the one thing is people don't realize when he was getting threatened and stuff, and he made his money, same thing as Donald Trump did, off the system. You know, so don't sit there and say that these people are bad when the system was created so that way we all have the same deal. But the other point is that we have the same deal that if we have to earn it, we have to go earn it. We don't sit there and we can't live off it. But see, on those straw man accounts, we're supposed to have our basic stuff covered. You know, or the prices are not supposed to be where they're at today, paying all these inflation prices for the bank interest rates increasing, so that way they can fluctuate the commercial banks, federal banks, for their assets. And remember, those assets are ours, so they can't sell them. They can't trade them when they sell public land, and they can't sell public land. That's actual federal laws, and I put that in the instruments. I filed that in the state of Oregon House and Senate over the last 20, 25 years. So, and they're going saying that we're a corporation, we don't have to go by the law, and that's the one blessing that we got with Donald Trump. He's going, yes, you do have to go by the law. And so that's where people are not comprehending what the truth really is on all this stuff, what he's standing up for. Like you said, man, I slept in bed with all these people, and everybody keeps posting their pages up with Hillary Clinton and, you know, all these other people. Remember, you know, with all the PD-Gate and Hollywood and all this stuff opening up, do you think that would have opened up if it wasn't for what's happened by the general public and, you know, putting, you know, having somebody in place so that way we're not living this hell? Yeah, so, I mean, it is stepping out of the movie and watching a production. So, anybody else like to throw something in? Okay. Well, if we're not getting a conversation, including from the young man tonight, and I'm really proud of your son because he is paying attention, getting stuff got through. He is getting things moving, and he is paying attention. You're doing a hell of a job as a father.
Oh, thank you.
And that's the one thing that parents need to realize when they're doing this type of stuff. Instead of having those kids in front of TVs all the time and not being afraid of climbing a tree, I mean, that's the point that we have the problems with today. Because everybody's afraid to stand out. You know, that's the one thing. Oh, I have to comply with this, or my pastor might not like it. Well, who gives a damn what the pastor likes? So, anyhow, with that, if nobody's got anything else, then we'll make it a short one tonight. And we do appreciate your time, caring, and walking with us and learning with us. And also, too, we thank the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, and most of all, the Creator, that we wouldn't be here. And we thank our elected and public servants that are standing up for their constitutional oath of servitude. And we thank the men and women that are going down to protect our families because they're able to and we're not able to do. And that includes the military beside our men and women. And don't forget, military, you better know who's lawful and legal down there. So that is the one point about this whole structure that is being tested. So with that, I would like to say may you all have a wonderful evening, and may the Creator bless you.
All right, Ed, so we're not going to do hip hues then?
All I didn't hear what you said.
We're not going to do hip Hughes then, because we still got one more video.
Go ahead. I can't hear you. I mean, literally, it's like you're speaking on with no microphone.
We're not doing hip Hughes because we got that one last video you gave me 3.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that one. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, that's the last video. I'm sorry.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. I need a haircut, but I don't care. We're going to do the Constitution for Dummies series, batter up at Amendment 9, one of the more mysterious amendments in the first 10. So, wherever you stand on the issues, we want to make sure, whether you're right, center, left, or cray-cray, that you are smart. You're standing smart on the issues. So giddy up for learning. I'm raising the roof, and here we go. The 9th Amendment. Alright, so let's read the words first. Shazam.
The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
So the origins of that amendment actually spring from kind of the ratification debate that we were having between the Feds and the anti-Feds. Of course, the anti-Feds want the Bill of Rights, and Madison and Hamilton are saying that we really don't need the Bill of Rights. Hamilton in Fed 84 states that by writing down our liberty, it's in a sense saying we know what liberty is, we're going to write it down, and therefore we're guaranteeing liberty. And that would be a mistake, Hamilton argues, by saying that in a sense we're limiting our liberty by doing that, by writing it down. So in response to that, we have the 9th Amendment, which basically says if we didn't write it down, if it's not in 1 through 8, that doesn't mean that there can't be other rights that are retained by the people. Of course, now the argument becomes, what does that mean, retained by the people? So the 9th Amendment can be used by progressives as, in a sense, an accelerator of the 14th Amendment. No state shall deny its citizens equal protection under the law. So if you take an issue which is controversial to some, I guess, would be gay marriage. Gay marriage isn't in the first 8 amendments. In fact, it's considered to be a reserved right protected by the 10th Amendment. It's up to the states. But if we as a society judge that that's a human right, that it's substantive democracy, that we're born with that liberty to marry who we want, that no state can use its power to deny that equal protection, 14th Amendment, and we can't use the Constitution and enumerated rights, just the fact it's not an enumerated right, to deny that right. Others on the right, Justice Bork, who was denied a spot on the Supreme Court, he called the 9th Amendment kind of an ink blot, that you really could see whatever you wanted to in it. Now, has the 9th Amendment been used exclusively by the court? No. But it has been used as a rationalization in certain concurrent decisions. So, for instance, in Griswold versus Connecticut, 1966, I could be wrong, basically contraceptives. Connecticut has a state law which states that people can't buy contraceptives. And the Supreme Court ruled that there was a kind of a guaranteed right of privacy in the 4th Amendment, and some of the justices argued that privacy could be 9th Amendment. Just because we didn't write down that privacy is a guaranteed amendment, we can't deny it because we didn't write it down. Many people see the 9th Amendment really not as a guarantee of rights in the Constitution, but more of kind of a how-to directional manual amendment of how we should be reading the previous amendments in light of the Constitution and natural rights. Libertarians see the 9th Amendment kind of like an accelerator of liberty, basically saying that if there's any question, if there's a lower court decision, or if there's a jury decision that puts into question one of the first 8 Bill of Rights, that the court, using the 9th Amendment, should always side on the side of liberty, really expanding the Bill of Rights into more of a loose interpretational context. So that's basically the 9th Amendment for you guys, whether you see it more as kind of protecting the states and the people's ability through their legislators to come up with new rights that would be protected, or you see it as an issue of substantive democracy, that we're born with liberty, and just because we didn't write it down when we wrote the Bill of Rights doesn't mean that we can allow majority populations and large factions to deny the people that right. So there you go, there's the 9th Amendment. I don't know. Why don't you put down in the comments below what you think the 9th Amendment means, because I'm not the master guru of knowing what it means. All I know is what it says, and then we can deal with interpretations. So giddy up, there you go. What do you click? You know who you should click? Click Noam Chomsky. You click Noam Chomsky, and you're going to be taken to the Constitution for Dummies series. Don't you want to go right now? Of course you do. And if you click right here, this button, we should grab something else. Click Uncle Sam. If you click Uncle Sam, look at it, it's so tempting to click. You will be able to go and subscribe to Hip Hughes History. That would be awesome. And check the description below for other links and EDU channels that are going to grow your brain 10 times its size. You know what I'm going to say. Whatever you're doing, guys, where your attention goes, your energy flows. All right, that's it for me. See you. I'm out. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to forget that one. Yeah, it is interesting with this Hughes guy, because, you know, he does come across to me as an attorney, especially when he keeps saying democracy. You know, I mean, a republic gives you rights. Democracy has interpretations of rights and privileges, and what you're allowed to do in your home. You know, if you're allowed to paint your house, you know, pink or blue or, you know, zebra stripe or whatever you want to paint your house. And, you know, democracy says, well, all right, if your neighbors don't like it, they go after and sue you for their property value being what they consider being lower because of what the tax man or the system does to punish you through religious points of view. If that clears up anything for people when you think about it. Because our court systems are run by administration of religions. And everybody, like he says, has an opinion, a point of view. And the Constitution was to stop opinions. It was to give you your foundation for your rights versus privileges. And your rights for your family that lost their blood on the soil and gave their lives to protect the next generations. And like I said, it always disturbs me when we always hear we're a country of immigrants. No, we're a country of invaders. Okay, we come in this country and, you know, we follow their administrative rules called the Constitution. And we follow what this country was founded on, hunting and fishing, not commercializing, feeding the world. It was supposed to feed and take care of us, take care of our families. And so when we've been depleting our own assets, you know, like the timber, selling it to other countries. I mean, Tokyo has been sinking it in their bay for, 40 years, you know, some of China has. And the sad part about that is people don't get it with all the radiation leaks. And then they're selling that timber back to American corporations that are making your furniture and stuff. Or they're bringing it up and they're making furniture and selling it to us. You guys got to realize that when they sunk all that wood in that ocean and the bays over there, you know, where do you think that radiation is going to go? You got to go absorb somebody. So it makes you wonder, too, if they thought about those things at the time when they did those things. So there's a lot of questions that, you know, people go, about. So it is bringing up these points of view of what you think and, you know, I don't like to go with opinions because opinions are like diapers. They need to be changed regularly. The Constitution doesn't need to be changed, doesn't need to be adapted. We just have to learn how to use it, learn the wording, what our forefathers did with it, comprehend what their thoughts and meanings back there were. Just because people say, well, things have changed today compared to then. No. We still want our rights. We still want our freedom. We still don't want to be enslaved by somebody's religious belief or administrative rules or corporation. So they haven't changed. So with that, if anybody else has got something to add, we'll end the program. And thank you for catching me on that one because I forgot about that. And the one thing is that with Hughes, he doesn't have a contact except for on Facebook. And I've sent some stuff there. I've never got a response back, so I'll try it again. But it is interesting. Go ahead.
Didn't we do the same thing with, like, the immigrants coming here since Indians were on this land before us?
Hmm? But don't forget. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, didn't we do the same as the immigrants that are invading America when the Indians were here before us?
Yes, but you also too got to remember some of the Indians allowed us on the soil because we weren't all violent and stuff. We were educating each other.
And another point is, the Indians were technically immigrants a long time before that.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, who owned this land before the Indians? Technically, they found Norse ships, Viking ships on this land. So, what are we part of the Norse, the over there in Norway and stuff, in Iceland? No, it's if you're born to this soil, 5th generation more by the Constitution, that means you're native to this soil.
You got a response?
No.
Well, it's like the other point too. What he's saying is that, you know, you go back in history and they say, well, it could be the Indians were Asians that turned into Indians. So we're not arguing all that point. The Constitution was put in place so that way we stop arguing about this immigration structure that we had an area that the Great Spirit gave people to protect themselves from all religious craziness. So you can live in harmony with the birds, the elk, the deer. You know, as some people in religion might say, oh, it might be a reference to the Garden of Eden. Well, what is the Garden of Eden when you look at the Bible? So I don't like that reference because if the woman ate the apple and then they're saying that the woman didn't eat the apple and they're playing all these religious games now today in the media, we just need to get back to basics. We get back to basics, we don't have issues, if that makes sense. Do you see that one?
Yes.
Do you see how important that the Constitution is that gives you your security?
Yes.
All right. So, and like I said, with the natives, the Indians, like when they're fighting on the oil and some of their land rights still today and stuff on their tribal lands, and I keep telling them they got to sue the board members. They got to sue, you know, the corporation that they have contracts with, the board members of their contracts. But some of their own board members, they don't want to go after their families, their brothers, sisters, and aunts and uncles. So it is a dilemma, if that makes sense. So any other thoughts or questions?
No.
Yeah, all right, go ahead, producer.
I was just going to say, sorry, I'll get closer to the microphone since you can't hear me. You need to turn your hearing aid.
Yeah, thank you, that's better.
You need to turn your hearing aid up. Anyways.
Well, yeah.
I wanted to...
Or you need to turn your volume up.
I already have it up really high. See?
So, anyhow, go ahead.
I wanted to basically contradict Hip Hughes because he said our democracy, which U.S. Constitution Article 4, Section 4 states this: the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. If he knows so much, he says, oh, I'm just reading the words. If he's just reading the words, then he should know he should not ever say democracy to the Constitution. Hip Hughes, in my personal opinion, is a moron.
Oh, yeah, that's like Franklin University. You know, we're a democracy. And all these universities out there, that's why I want to know if Dave Hughes is a professor or not of a university, because that's what he talks about. That's the way he comes across to me about. So, I mean, you know, he keeps talking democracy. Without a democracy, those people wouldn't have the inflated jobs they have because our government is supposed to be limited, you know, and not expanding to all these nonprofits and all these stuff that are funded, you know, like all these, you know, watershed councils. What, there's 4,000 watershed councils across the United States now? and 30 years ago there wasn't one. So, people got to look at how they have manipulated your birth certificate straw man account and your universities and the education. And so we have all this knowledge, then why are we having homeless problems and starving problems in our own country? So let's just step out of the movie and watch the production. So anybody else? Well, with that, I'm done.
All right, then we'll close the show. Thank you. I apologize for any issues. I'm not having the best of day today with computer and with biological issues. So thank you for bearing with us on that. It is Sunday, October 21st, 2018. You have been listening to Education with Ed, and it is currently 6:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ed's counter is probably at about 89 or something like that, but he got away scot-free since I wasn't able to pay as much attention today. So, with that, y'all have a good week, enjoy your week, and we'll catch you next Saturday with Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Goodbye.